This series of videos is intended to provide the sport of obedience with a clear explanation of the individual obedience exercises, procedures, and scoring. It is not intended to be the only resource, and participants in the sport are encouraged to attend judges' panel discussions, view AKC webinars, and above all, read the regulations. This is not an AKC product. It is based on the obedience regulations and shares the interpretations of many AKC judges. KPS takes full responsibility for its content. One might ask, why does the sport of obedience have rules? Rules set the stage for competition, defining how to score, what's fair, and what's not. They level the playing field so that talent shines and skill wins out over the inconsequential. It's all about keeping the sport honest and exciting. Without these guidelines, sports would be chaos. There'd be no buzzer beaters, no photo finishes, no underdog stories. Rules and regulations aren't just a list of do's and don'ts. They're the unseen heroes that make every game worth watching. In this video, we will discuss the open retrieve on the flat exercise. In Open A, this is the exercise that follows the drop on recall exercise. All open exercises are performed off-leash. In order to master this exercise, it is important that the handler understand the regulations. While the regulations are not particularly entertaining, they must be read and studied in order to be successful. Reading the regulations may not answer all of your questions, so we recommend that you view this video and attend any judges' panel discussion or regulation seminar that may be available to the handler or trainer. AKC Judges Education webinars and videos are excellent sources as well. The principal feature of the retrieve on the flat is that the dog will retrieve promptly. In AKC Regulations, Chapter 4, Section 3, we are told that there are 20 points available for this exercise. The team must retain more than 50% of the points available. In this exercise, this would be 10.5 points in order to qualify. The judge's orders for this exercise are a query, "Are you ready?" An order, "Throw it." Send your dog. Take it. Finish. And then a statement, "Exercise finished." We will watch this exercise in its entirety, and then we will break it down into its elements, common errors, and scoring.
Retrieve on the flat. Are you ready?
Ready.
Throw it.
Wait.
Send your dog.
Fetch.
Take it. Finish. Exercise finished.
The judge will mark the ring for this exercise in order to ensure that all teams have the same opportunities and requirements. The ring may be delineated by some kind of ring barrier. This may be collapsed ring gating, PVC pipe, and for outdoor trials it could be a rope strung between rods driven into the ground. The judge may identify where he or she wishes you to sit your dog to start and finish the exercise. This marking could be clips on the gating, survey tape, or tape on the barrier or on the floor. The handler should line up behind the mark. Should the handler line up ahead of the mark, the judge may ask the handler to move behind the mark and or score the error. Regardless if the judge asks the handler to move or not, it can be scored in the miscellaneous section as a handler error. If the handler is ready, he or she should respond by saying yes or ready or other forms of affirmation. A nod of the head is acceptable as long as the judge can see it. If the handler is not ready, they should answer no. Trials can be noisy, so ready or not, make sure the judge hears you. The judge will give the order, "Throw it." In directing the dog to stay, a command and signal may be given. The handler must not signal the dog to stay with the same hand that is holding the dumbbell. The dumbbell must be thrown a minimum of 20 feet from the team. If it does not go 20 feet, a rethrow is called for. There is no penalty for a rethrow. The same is true if the dumbbell goes under the ring barrier or is otherwise difficult to retrieve. The judge may not ask nor the handler offer permission to send the dog to a bad throw position. The judge or the steward will retrieve the dumbbell and have the handler rethrow without penalty. A note regarding the dumbbell. The dumbbell must be made of an appropriate size for the dog. It must be of wood or similar material approximating wood. The dumbbell may have the dog's name or other identifying marks, but may not have anything attached to it. It may not have titles painted or impressed upon it. The judge will examine the dumbbell. Having been given the order to stay, the dog must not leave its place until commanded or signaled to do so. Movement will not necessarily result in a penalty. If the dog shifts weight to keep its balance, or if a foot or two moves, there should be no penalty. If the dog anticipates a signal or command, it should be scored as an NQ. After giving the order to throw it, and once the dumbbell has stopped moving, the judge will order,
Send your dog.
Send your dog.
Fetch.
The handler may use either command or signal, but not both, in order to send the dog. The dog is required to move forward at a gallop or a trot.
Take it.
Walking
Out.
forward or returning
Finish.
at a walk will result in a substantial penalty. Once being signaled or commanded to retrieve, the dog is to go directly to the dumbbell, in other words, without deviation or hesitation. This definition places two responsibilities on the dog. It cannot wander off course without deviation, nor can it fail to act immediately without hesitation. The degree to which the dog wanders or hesitates will determine the penalty.
Send your dog.
The dog is to pick up the dumbbell briskly and without hesitation. In other words, the dog's pickup must be quick and precise. The dog should not stop at the dumbbell and then pick it up. Some judges may score a dog that circles the dumbbell and then picks it up. The judge can score in this manner because the pickup fails to meet their image of a perfect performance. More on this later. A note here on misthrows. As long as the dumbbell is in the ring and 20 feet from the handler, no rethrows are required. Most judges will provide a rethrow if the dumbbell is out of sight of the dog, behind a jump for example, or otherwise creates a difficult problem for retrieval. However, there is no requirement for a rethrow if the throw is legal. Handlers sometimes feel the need to adjust their position while the dog is retrieving the dumbbell. However, once the exercise begins, the handler may not move their feet. They should maintain the natural position until ordered to take the dumbbell. Additional movements of the hands or body may be scored as additional signals. This includes the head and may include facial expressions. An example of this occurs when the dog is returning off course for a good front. Handlers might inappropriately use body language to steer the dog into position by leaning one way or the other. Another occurs after the dog turns to come into front position and the handler snaps their head and gaze down to indicate to the dog where they want the dog to end up. Following the dog into front is natural and acceptable. Using body language to aid the dog is worthy of a penalty. The dog is to return the dumbbell without excessive mouthing, chewing, or playing with it. The dog must come to the front position, sitting straight and aligned with the handler. The dog must be close enough for the handler to touch the dog's head without excessive reaching, bending, or moving of the feet. A dog that sits farther away will receive an NQ. The judge will order, finish. The handler may give a signal or command to finish the dog. The hand with the dumbbell can be held to the chest or midriff, but it cannot move during the command or signal to finish. Once the dog is in heel position, the judge will state, "Exercise finished." The handler can then release the dog. We will now take a look at the penalties associated with retrieve on the flat. Penalties are levied when a dog or handler violates the regulations. We will begin by looking at errors that can result in an NQ. Giving a second command to retrieve. The dog failing to retrieve. Using the dog's name and giving a signal. Giving a command and a signal to retrieve. Giving a prohibited signal to retrieve. The handler may give one command or signal to send the dog to retrieve. Any additional utterances or movements that might be perceived as a command or signal, therefore, is an NQ. The dog must retrieve the dumbbell and return so that the handler can touch the dog's head without excessive reaching, bending, or moving of the feet. The handler may give a command or signal to send the dog to retrieve the dumbbell, but not both. Giving a signal and a command will result in a score of NQ. The handler may not use the dog's name and a signal to send the dog to retrieve. This would result in an NQ. The handler may not use a prohibited signal. Holding a signal, giving a signal that aids the dog. A signal that does not start and end at the natural position may result in an NQ. Now we will look at handler or dog errors that can result in a minor to substantial penalty. Delayed response to the handler's signal or command to retrieve. Giving a signal to stay using the hand holding the dumbbell. The dog wanders going to or from the dumbbell. The dog mouths the dumbbell. Giving a prohibited signal to retrieve. The dog must retrieve the dumbbell briskly after the judge gives the order to send your dog. The handler must not use the hand holding the dumbbell to signal the dog to stay. The dog must go directly to the dumbbell and then return directly to the handler. It is the degree that determines whether or not this is an NQ or a substantial penalty. The dog must not mouth, drop, or play with the dumbbell. On arriving back at the handler, the dog must release the dumbbell without reluctance. The handler may not slow their signal or otherwise aid the dog by altering their signal. Slow or elaborate signals should be scored. Continuing with errors that can result in a minor to substantial penalty, they include the handler fails to return to a natural position. The handler has moved his or her feet. Novice recall exercise penalties are also applicable here. Loud or harsh commands. Handler touches the dog with the hand or the dumbbell. If the handler bent their knees to the extent necessary in giving a signal to the dog, the handler must then stand erect and in natural position with their arms at their side. The handler must not give commands that are loud or harsh as determined by the judge. Loud commands by the handlers to their dog create a poor impression of obedience and should be avoided. Once the exercise begins, the handler may not move their feet. Again, the degree of movement determines the penalty. Certain miscellaneous penalties may apply, such as restraining the dog prior to the exercise beginning or rubbing the dog's ear to emphasize the need to retrieve. Chapter 2, Section 2, Standard of Perfection. The obedience regulations set the standard of perfection by which the performance of each dog is scored and give the judge little choice in deciding how an exercise is to be performed. They require that the judges fulfill their responsibility by making competent decisions based on a mental picture of the perfect performance. The judge must carry a mental picture of the theoretically perfect performance for each exercise, score each dog and handler against this standard. This perfect picture must comply with these regulations and shall combine the utmost in willingness, enjoyment, and precision on the part of the dog with naturalness, gentleness, and smoothness on the part of the handler. We hope that this video has improved your understanding of the retrieve on the flat exercise. If so, please like and subscribe to see other videos about AKC exercises explained. Use the following QR code for all of the videos in our playlist. Thanks for watching and have a good trial.